My father had been buried for less than 2 hours when I lost everything. Not because of a fire, not because of an accident, but because the woman standing at my front door looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You don't live here anymore." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. As I stood there wearing the same black suit from my father's funeral, holding nothing except my car keys and the folded funeral program. My stepmother slowly closed the front door in my face, and then I heard the deadbolt lock. That sound echoed louder than the church bells that had rung earlier that morning. My name is Daniel. I'm 30 years old. Until that afternoon, I believed I knew my family. I couldn't have been more wrong. My parents divorced when I was 12. A year later, my father married Linda. She was polite. Always smiling, always bringing homemade desserts to family dinners. Everyone said I was lucky to have such a caring stepmother. I wanted to believe that, but there was always something about her smile. It never reached her eyes. As I grew older, I moved to another state for work. Even then, I called my father every Sunday. He never missed my birthday. Never forgot Christmas. Whenever I visited, he would quietly tell me, "One day this house will always be your home." It wasn't just any house. My grandfather built it with his own hands nearly 60 years ago. Every wooden floor carried family memories. Every wall held photographs of generations before me. To me, that house wasn't property. It was family. Then everything changed. 6 months before my father's death, he was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. I flew back immediately. For weeks I stayed by his side. I drove him to treatments, cooked meals, helped him walk when he became too weak. Linda, surprisingly, insisted on handling all the paperwork. Insurance, bank accounts, medical bills. She constantly reminded everyone, "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." At the time, none of us questioned it. Why would we? She was his wife. Or so we thought. During his final week, my father asked to speak with me alone. His voice had become barely audible. He squeezed my hand and whispered, "Whatever happens, don't let anyone take this house." Before I could ask what he meant, Linda walked into the room. She smiled and interrupted, "Daniel, your father needs to rest." That was the last private conversation I ever had with him. 3 days later, he passed away. The funeral was heartbreaking. Friends, neighbors, former co-workers. Everyone shared stories about the generous man my father had always been. Linda cried harder than anyone. At least, it looked that way after the service ended. People slowly returned to their lives. I drove back to the family home, expecting to help organize my father's belongings. Instead, I found all my luggage sitting on the front porch. Every suitcase, every box, even the framed photograph of me and my father fishing when I was 10 years old. Confused, I knocked on the door. Linda opened it only a few inches. Her expression was completely different from the grieving widow everyone had seen at the funeral. Cold. Confident. Almost relieved. Without inviting me inside, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a typed letter. According to the document, the house now belonged entirely to her. I had exactly 24 hours to remove anything she considered mine. I stared at the paper. "This has to be a mistake." She folded her arms. "No mistake. Your father changed everything before he died." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "My father promised this house would stay in the family." She smiled. "I am his family." Then she shut the door. I stood frozen on the porch. But something didn't feel right. My father had spent decades protecting this house. There was no way. Absolutely no way he would willingly leave me with nothing. As I looked down at the envelope one last time, one tiny detail caught my attention. A signature. It looked like my father's, but something about it seemed off. That was the moment I made a decision. I wasn't walking away. Even if it meant fighting the longest legal battle of my life, I was going to uncover the truth. Because deep inside, I knew my father had left behind more than memories. He had left behind a secret. Asterisk the next morning, I didn't hire a moving truck. I hired a lawyer. At first. She listened quietly as I explained everything. My father's promise, the sudden eviction, the suspicious signature. When I finally placed the property document on her desk, she frowned. This signature looks unusual. My heart skipped a beat. You think it's fake? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she picked up a magnifying glass. After nearly a minute of silence, she looked at me and said, "I think your instincts are right." For the first time since my father's funeral, I felt hope. The court ordered Linda to provide every legal document connected to my father's estate. She looked calm. Confident. Almost amused. As if she already knew she couldn't lose. But then, something unexpected happened. The judge asked for my father's original will. Linda's attorney claimed it had been replaced by a newer version signed only 3 weeks before my father's death. That should have ended the case. Except. The original will had never been destroyed. It still existed, hidden in the office of my father's longtime attorney. The judge ordered both versions to be examined by a handwriting expert. Weeks passed. Every day felt longer than the last. Friends started choosing sides. Some believed Linda. Others quietly admitted they had always felt something wasn't right about her. Then one evening, I received a phone call that changed everything. It wasn't my lawyer. It was my father's former nurse. She sounded nervous. "I think I need to tell you something." We met at a small coffee shop the next morning. She looked around several times before speaking. "Your father asked for you many times during his last week." "I know," I replied. "But Linda always said he was too tired." The nurse slowly nodded. "That wasn't true." I stared at her. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "Your stepmother wouldn't let anyone be alone with him, not even me." She explained that Linda insisted on controlling every visitor. Every phone call, every document, even the medication schedule. Then she leaned closer and whispered, "The day those papers were signed, your father was heavily sedated." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "If that's true," she interrupted, "I wrote everything down." She reached into her purse and handed me a small notebook. Every shift, every medication. Every unusual incident, everything had been recorded, including the exact time my father received medication powerful enough to leave him barely conscious. The signature on the so-called new will had been made less than 30 minutes later. Suddenly. Everything made sense. Linda hadn't just manipulated paperwork. She may have manipulated my father. When my lawyer presented the nurse's notes in court, the atmosphere changed immediately. Linda stopped smiling. For the first time, she looked afraid. The handwriting expert then delivered his report. The signature shows multiple signs of tracing. The pressure, stroke direction, and hesitation marks are inconsistent with authentic samples. The courtroom fell silent. Linda's attorney tried to object, but the damage had already been done. Then came the biggest surprise of all. My father's attorney entered the courtroom carrying a sealed envelope. I was instructed to deliver this only if the original will was ever challenged. The judge carefully opened it. Inside. Was a handwritten letter from my father. He had written it months before his illness became severe. The judge began reading it aloud. "If you're hearing this letter, it means someone has tried to change my final wishes." My heart pounded. I built this home with my father. It belongs to my son. No amount of money should ever separate him from his family. By now, even members of the jury looked emotional. Then came the final sentence. "I love my wife, but if she ever attempts to take this house from my son, I want the court to know she is acting against my wishes." Linda's face turned completely pale. She knew